Once a symbol of Soviet resilience during World War II, Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, not only boasts the timeless beauty of European architecture, but is also the birthplace of one of the most powerful figures of the 21st century, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in a cramped ground-floor communal apartment. The flat was a mere 20 square meters, shared with two other families. No hot water, no private bathroom. This was his first world. Putin's father, Vladimir Spiridonovich, had served in a special forces unit during the war, reserved, strict, and disciplined. His mother, Maria Ivanovna, was a gentle, patient factory worker. Both were survivors of the siege of Leningrad, an experience that left deep imprints on their generation. Silent, frugal, and always on guard. Putin was their only child. Two older brothers had died, one from illness, the other during the war. In that silence and hardship, young Putin grew up introverted, observant, and quiet. He wasn't an ideal student, often fighting in the streets, but it wasn't rage that drove him, it was pride. He refused to be bullied. This drive to never appear weak would define him. At the age of 10, Putin watched a film about Soviet spies operating in Nazi Germany. Mysterious men working in silence, sacrificing for the motherland without recognition. It left a powerful impression on his young mind. He immediately went to the local KGB office and asked, "How can I become a spy?" The answer: study hard, get into university, especially law. Putin remembered that. From being an average student, he began improving his grades, studying foreign languages, and keeping a spotless record. His goal wasn't fame or wealth, it was to serve in the shadows. He pursued law at Leningrad State University, where he came under the guidance of Anatoly Sobchak, later the first mayor of St. Petersburg, and a major influence on Putin's political path. After graduation, Putin joined the KGB in 1975. For nearly 15 years, he worked in various departments, mainly monitoring foreigners and managing internal intelligence. His most notable posting was in Dresden, East Germany, in the late 1980s. There, he experienced both monotony and danger. He learned German, built networks, and lived the true life of a ghost. But when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, the KGB office in Dresden was besieged. Putin tried to contact Moscow for instructions, only to receive a chilling response. Moscow is silent. That was his first real lesson in the fragility of power. No orders, no rescue. Everything vanished overnight. Putin personally burned classified documents, protected his staff, and eventually returned to Russia. Back in St. Petersburg in the 1990s, post-Soviet Russia was a chaotic mess. Inflation, poverty, mafia violence, and political instability. Anatoly Sobchak, now the city's mayor, called on Putin to become his deputy. Putin, quiet but efficient, handled meetings, liaised with businesses, and managed foreign relations, all behind the scenes. He gradually became indispensable. When Sobchak lost re-election in 1996, Putin moved to Moscow and was recruited into the Kremlin's administrative machinery. His organizational talent, discretion, and loyalty stood out. In 1999, President Boris Yeltsin, amid scandals and declining health, needed a successor he could trust to protect him and his family. That man was Putin. On December 31, 1999, as the country celebrated New Year's Eve, Yeltsin suddenly resigned. "I'm leaving early so Russia can have a strong leader." And just like that, Putin became acting president. Within a year, he won the election. With his decisive image and military victory in Chechnya, Putin presented himself as a strongman. He cracked down on mafia groups, reined in the oligarchs, brought media under control, and, most crucially, restored national pride. Russians, tired of a decade of chaos, began to embrace him. To them, Putin embodied order, discipline, and a strong Russia. Under Putin, Russia reasserted itself as a major power on the world stage. His tenure marked a sharp pivot from the chaotic 1990s to a more centralized, authoritarian system. The world watched as Putin played geopolitical chess, often several moves ahead of his opponents. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia, citing protection for Russian citizens in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. This marked the first major military intervention outside its borders since the fall of the Soviet Union. Though condemned internationally, the move reasserted Russia's willingness to use force in its near abroad. Then came 2014. Crimea, long part of Ukraine, was annexed by Russia following a disputed referendum. Putin's move was bold, calculated, and polarizing. To many Russians, it was the correction of a historical mistake. To the West, it was a breach of international law. Sanctions followed, but Putin's domestic approval soared. Alongside military action, Putin perfected the art of information warfare. Cyber attacks, social media manipulation, and state-sponsored propaganda became strategic tools. The 2016 U.S. presidential election was allegedly influenced by Russian interference, further entrenching East-West distrust. Economically, Putin weaponized energy. Russia's vast oil and gas reserves became tools of influence over Europe. Countries like Germany and Hungary found themselves reliant on Russian fuel, giving the Kremlin significant leverage. He cultivated strategic alliances, some based on mutual interests, others out of shared opposition to Western dominance. China became a key partner, both economically and diplomatically. Iran, Syria, Venezuela, all found a friend in Putin's Russia. At home, dissent dwindled. Opposition leaders like Boris Nemtsov were assassinated. Others like Alexei Navalny were jailed. Independent media shrank under pressure or was reclassified as foreign agents. Despite accusations of dictatorship, many Russians viewed Putin as a protector of culture, of tradition, of national pride. His carefully managed image, a bare-chested rider, a skilled judo master, a patriot who speaks softly but carries a big stick, only deepened his mythos. In February 2022, the world held its breath as Russian troops poured across the Ukrainian border. The largest European land conflict since World War II had begun. Putin claimed it was a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. The West responded with unprecedented sanctions, aiming to cripple the Russian economy. Major corporations pulled out. Russian banks were removed from SWIFT. Oil and gas exports were restricted. Yet, the economy adapted. Russia found new markets, especially in Asia. Internal production increased. The ruble rebounded. But the war was not short. Ukrainian resistance, bolstered by Western arms and intelligence, turned the conflict into a long, grinding war of attrition. Cities were leveled. Thousands died. Refugee crises erupted. The human cost was staggering. Internationally, Russia found itself increasingly isolated. NATO, which Putin sought to weaken, became more united than ever. Finland and Sweden, longtime neutrals, applied for membership. The European Union accelerated energy independence plans. Domestically, Putin's grip remained tight. War propaganda surged. Critics vanished. Censorship returned to Soviet-era levels, but cracks appeared. Protests flared, though quickly crushed. Rumors of dissent within the elite swirled. Was this Putin's greatest miscalculation, or merely another strategic play in a grander game? He remained defiant. "We will achieve our goals," he insisted. But with rising costs and no clear exit strategy, even allies began to question the path forward. And yet, for Putin, history is a long arc. He plays not for applause, but for legacy. for the resurrection of a Russian empire, for a place in the pantheon of czars and generals. More than 2 decades in power have etched Putin's name into the stone of history. But what that legacy will mean remains fiercely debated.
He rewrote the Russian constitution to allow himself to potentially remain in power until 2036. He reshaped the political system into a vertical structure where loyalty to the Kremlin trumped ideology or vision. The media became a state arm, the judiciary an extension of executive will. To his supporters, Putin saved Russia from the brink. He brought stability, national pride, and global relevance. They see him as a guardian of sovereignty against a hostile, hypocritical West. Schools teach his achievements, streets bear his image, songs are written in his praise. To his critics, he stifled democracy, empowered oligarchy, and dragged the nation into isolation and authoritarianism. They point to poisoned dissidents, rigged elections, and the erosion of civil liberties. They fear what comes next, both for Russia and the world. Yet Putin remains an enigma, not easily read, not easily dismissed. Cold and calculating, but also deeply attuned to the Russian psyche. He embodies the contradictions of the nation he leads, proud and wounded, fierce and fearful, ancient yet searching for identity. When he finally leaves office, whenever and however that may happen, his shadow will linger. His policies, his wars, his methods, they've become part of Russia's DNA. And the silent boy from Leningrad who once dreamed of being a spy will be remembered not just as a ruler, but as a force. A question, a riddle that only time may solve.